objectives for today are to walk you through all of the components of the evaluation instrument for school counselors. The evaluation instrument, it has been redesigned and overhauled to support counselor growth and improve impacts on students. Um, we will understand that the special areas adept process is based on best practices and an ongoing system of feedback and support. Okay. So today's focus is school counselors. If you are an evaluator who evaluates the other two special areas, which are school librarians and speech language professionals, school library is tomorrow from 2 to 3, and speech language professionals are Thursday from 2 to 3. So again, we appreciate you being here. We're going to go through an overview of just the evaluation model, contract levels. We're going to hit on that. I'm not going to deep dive into contract levels because the target audience for this is anyone that's doing evaluations, not necessarily our ADEPT coordinators um, who manage contract levels. And then we're going to deep dive into the rubric for just a few minutes, but our real concentration and focus today is going to be on the actual evaluation process, from the orientation to signatures at the end of the final conference. So I'll actually walk you through an evaluation in SC Lead. Okay. So one of the key pieces of the evaluation model in ADEPT 2020 is the rubric. And the rubrics are new for these three areas because they were previously a safety model that was more portfolio based and not rubric based. So we'll look at the rubric. The school counselor rubric is composed of 4 domains: planning, program management, directed and indirect services, and professionalism. Then those 4 domains are divided into 12 indicators. And then we also have the 4 performance levels from unsatisfactory to exemplary. And you'll notice that the big bucket, planning, is in the top teal bar, and then the performance categories, the performance domains, are in that next bar or row. In the first column, you'll have indicators as well as sources of evidence, and then in the actual buckets, you will see the descriptors. The model is built on a growth mindset, gradually increasing student-centered as you move to the left. So unsatisfactory would be very teacher-centered or very librarian-centered or very counselor-centered, where they're doing all the work and just maintaining status quo, basically. But as you move farther left and up the performance domains, performance categories, then that's where you really see that focus on student engagement. One of the key pieces of the ADEPT 2020 model is we embedded, as we designed it, administrative support. And there's a whole section in the guidelines for administrators to help administrators understand the role of the school counselor. It has sections in each domain in the rubric for support and offering examples of places that you could find evidence for the domains and the indicators. We also embedded scripted questions for the pre and post conferences, and those are cross-referenced to indicators in the rubric so that it directs you straight to where you're finding evidence and where you can categorize that evidence when you get ready to do so. And then our training. We train to include the roles and responsibilities via video clips of actual South Carolina school counselors. And that's in the evaluator training that's embedded in Moodle, and it is on demand. If you have not already taken the evaluator training and completed that, we would strongly suggest that it would benefit you. It would help you understand some of the things that we're going to be talking about today. Even if you're not going to evaluate someone, if you're going to be evaluated, motivated using the model, we definitely would recommend still going through the training. And if you have not and you would like to do so, please reach out to your special area manager in your district for that. Okay. The domain weights for school counseling are planning is a weight of 15%, program management 15%, direct and indirect services, which is the bulk of what they do or you do, is 50%, and then professionalism is 20%. The reason professionalism is higher than the other models is because of the confidential nature of the school counselor's job. So let's talk about the process and collecting evidence. Different contract levels require different levels of evaluation. And like I said, I'm not going to go too deeply into contract levels, but this graphic is available on our website. But it also details what exactly is required for each contract level. So if you've got a school counselor on an induction formative, then they would have at least one semester observation, one observation per semester. Um, the spring observations cannot be waived for us for an induction formative. They are required to complete a school counselor plan. They are required to complete a student growth goal. They are required to complete the annual calendar. They do not have to have a content expert on their evaluation team, and they are assigned a mentor. And you'll see as you go down the contract levels or up the contract levels, however you want to say it, you can see that the requirements vary. But this is a really useful tool. I think I use it all the time when I get phone calls and field questions about school counselor. Um, and there's one of these for each of the three special areas. Reminders for evaluation setup. If you're the person that's setting up the evaluations, every evaluation needs an evaluation chair. If you haven't assigned the chair, then it causes issues when you get ready to finalize the evaluation. When adding team members, the evaluator needs to be given permissions to the evaluation. If evaluation teams are created at the district level, then schools cannot change the teams. So if your district adept coordinator sets up all your evaluations for you, then if you're the principal and you want to go in and change a team or make an adjustment, you would need to consult with your adept coordinator. So that's not a school level permission if it's been done at the district level. But if you are the principal and you have that permission and you have set up your evaluations, then you can make changes, but so can the district. And then the orientation date must be entered by an adept administrator or an evaluator before the teacher can sign the orientation. Okay. Now let's jump into SC Lead. Mhm. And what I'm going to use today to show you the steps is the help guide. And if you go on SC Lead, on the home page at the bottom right corner, you'll see the help resources. And if you scroll down a little, you'll see ADEPT 2020. That is exactly what I used to create this presentation today. I used the help guide. And so those are truly, really super helpful. I actually even have mine printed off to use um, while I'm talking to you because I'm fighting a migraine and I'm afraid I will mess up if I don't. Right. Can y'all see my screen? Okay. If you go to NSC Lead, if you're the evaluator, now why not? Okay. Now, okay, gotta love it. So when you enter SC Lead as the evaluator, you will go to your Evaluations tab, and under Evaluations, that tab will have all of the evaluations that are assigned to you. So for today's purposes, we're going to have Sunnyside Counselor, and she is an annual one summative counselor. So this is her high stakes year. She's got to pass this at adept evaluation in order to be able to progress to a professional certificate. So we're just going to assume that she's already signed her orientation. We've already assigned it and she's signed. We've assigned it and she has signed it. So as you know, the orientation is there. She has signed it. I'm the principal, so I've signed it as well. So then the first thing that we want the school counselor to do is to create a school counselor plan. So the school counselor would go in, I'm going to go in and sign in as the school counselor. And I'm going to sign my orientation. And then I'm going to create my plan. All you do as a school counselor creating your plan is click Start Plan. And each question requires an answer. So the first one is describe how you will support and help to accomplish the school counseling program goals. Those are the school-wide goals. In case you are one counselor in a group of counselors for your school, if you're in a larger school and you're part of a counseling team, then you may have one school counseling plan overall, and then each of you would have your own individual counselor plan. So this is your part of that overall plan. So you would answer these questions. You would tell how is your caseload defined? Is it alphabetical? If you are responsible for A through F, if you have grade levels, if that's how your caseload is divided, or if you have all the students in the building. If you're the only school counselor in town, then you would click that. And then you would describe your caseload. Um, the school counselor responsibilities. If any of these are not your responsibility, then you would not check that, but you would check everything that you're responsible for. And if you are responsible for all of it, then you would check all of it. And then you would describe some of your responsibilities. This is if you check the other special programs. Then you would complete your use of time assessment, what data sources you use and collect and analyze to develop any services for your students, how you disaggregate the data and create programs to address these subgroups. The plan really gives you a insight into what the counselor does every day. And so if you're the counselor completing the plan, you want to give your evaluator a really good snapshot of what you do, what programs you are leading, what you're creating, what you want to do, and what you do. This is your opportunity to explain your job. Um, And then if you have any attachments, if you have any lesson plans, or if you have agendas from meetings or small groups or things like any communication with parents, anything you want to add to your plan, you would add right here in the attachment section. Um, and then, so that's your school counseling plan. You'll sit down at your first preliminary conference and you will complete this section. So the results data from implemented activities, again, this is the preliminary evaluation cycle. This is that usually around the end of the first semester, you would have this conference and you would complete this section of the plan. And then you would complete the questions about collaboration, and always, always, always be sure that you click down far enough or scroll down far enough to click save. Anything that you don't save will not save automatically. So you complete the plan, and then you come in at a preliminary approval conference. That's the beginning conference. This is where you get your plan approved. And you would come in, you would have this conference, and you would sign it. And then the evaluator would sign. So you've created your plan, you've saved it, and you've gone into your preliminary conference and you're going to sign it. And then let's look at the goals. So another component of the school counselor evaluation that is different from the other areas is the student growth goal. And this is basically a lot like an SLO, but you're required to complete this. And all you would do is click under goals and add goal. You would complete and answer the questions, create your SMART goal, describe how your practice supports that goal, around which indicator are you focusing. You would click whichever one, how your collaboration is going to support that goal, if you do any lesson planning, how that lesson planning and when we say lesson planning, we don't necessarily mean that you're going to go into a classroom and teach a whole group lesson. The lesson plan that you create for the purposes of this evaluation could be a plan that you create for a small group. It could be a plan that you initiate with parents. It does not have to be an actual classroom-based instruction lesson plan in the traditional sense. And then any planned activities or interventions that you have in mind for your student growth goal. And then you would submit. And of course, have to type something in or it won't save. So then you would go to, and again with the student growth goal, you also have the same signatures there. So you would, when you add the goal, and you submit, the signature page will come up. Another part of the plan of the evaluation tool is the school counselor annual calendar. The annual calendar is the only component of the plan that does not require signatures because it is a fluid document. You can go in and make changes to this at any time. Your evaluation team does have access to the calendar and they can see it at any time, but you can also go in and make changes to it. If once you sign things in SC Lead, it locks it from any changes. But all you would do is complete your plan for your calendar, ongoing services or anything that you have consistently, um, but then August, September, October, all the way through May. And then you click save. Again, be sure you click save or it all goes away. Now, let's look at observations. So all of those things are done by the school counselor, but now we're going to really dive in as the evaluator. So if I'm the principal and I'm going to conduct this evaluation, I've made sure that the school counselor has signed her orientation, and she has. So then when I schedule that preliminary conference, that approval conference, then I would go in and address the plan, go in and have that conference with that school counselor and have those signatures at the end of the conference. Same with the student growth goal. We would maybe discuss the annual calendar. And then if I'm getting ready for an observation after that preliminary conference, I know sort of the layout of the plan for the school counselor for the year. I go ahead and set up those observations. Now, remember that school counselors are different from the other two special areas in that all of their observations must be announced. They have to be planned ahead and scheduled ahead due to confidentiality concerns. So when I am the evaluator and I'm going to set up that conference, I need to schedule my pre-conference ahead of time. So I'm going to add an observation. It's a fall semester observation. I'm going to set the date for the 15th. Um, oh, yep, the principal, you identify who's doing the observation. And we're at Sunnyside Elementary. And this creates the observation in SC Lead. Okay. So now I go to the pre-conference. It's time for the pre-conference. I've scheduled the observation. I know that within 3 days beforehand, I need to have the pre-conference. So I scheduled that first. We have the script, we have the outline, the purpose, we set the stage, and then you would enter. Now to manipulate this, you have to click edit. So the first thing you do is click edit. I'm going to say that today is going to be my pre-conference since the observation is going to be Friday. And then these are required questions. We're going to greet, set the tone, establish the length of the conference. We'll be here about 10 minutes. We're going to review the process and ask a general question like, so what are we focusing on this week? Or how's your week going? What am I going to see when I come in on Friday? And so then you ask these scripted questions as the evaluator, and you type in the responses that you get from the school counselor. Again, remember that we have aligned each question to a domain and to an indicator, at least one, if not more than one. So for instance, question number 1 applies to the planning domain and the program management domain. It applies to program plans and assessment. So we tried to utilize as many pieces of evidence in multiple places as we could, and we tried to help you by aligning these questions. So you would complete all the questions in the pre-conference. Remember, this is evidence. Any questions you may have lingering about the what you're going to see, the observation, and then the closing. I'll see you on Friday, and you save. So that gives you that evidence. If you script in SC Lead, if your district allows scripting or encourages scripting, you would be the evaluator completing this who's the only one that sees the script. So you would complete the script, and then you would click into whichever domains you observed. And whichever indicators. So if I'm going in and I'm looking for program plans and communication and lesson planning, and then of course, if I answered all those questions in the pre-conference, that already ties to assessment and progress monitoring. If I'm going in to see a conference, a small group, session. Say, for instance, I'm going in to see a small group on bullying. Then I would click on direct services because that's what I'm going to witness. And then add that scripting note. Okay. Once I have finished the observation, then I allow educator self-reflection. So once I have finished the observation and I've entered my script and I'm scoring, I go ahead and click allow educator to self-reflect. So that allows the counselor to complete the self-reflection. And it will send her a notification, SC Lead will send her a notification that it's been released and it's time for her to do that. If I have any documents from the small group that I've observed or from whatever I've observed. If you have any work, any guides, any attachments, they go here. And don't forget to click submit. Then I go to the post conference. And here's where I can see the self score of the school counselor. Remember that in the post conference, you do not share scores because you are still building that evaluation, that observation. Um, this is different from teachers because during teacher conferences you would share scores, but because you're not going to see all of the indicators in one observation of a school counselor, that's why we created the worksheet. And we'll talk about the worksheet in just a second. Again, we've scripted out and outlined the timeline of the process of the post-conference. This is your post-conference planning sheet. Again, with the required questions, we've scripted them for you and we've aligned them to the indicators. Another difference because you're still collecting evidence here. Just like with the teachers, you're going to give an area of reinforcement and an area of refinement and how you plan to support that counselor and how you can help them grow through these refinements and reinforcements. You're going to restate the areas of refinement and reinforcement. You're going to share scores if you have scores ready. You're going to sign all of your documentation and you're going to have your closing statement. Again, don't forget to save. But the worksheets are in evaluation conferences. So you're going to go to evaluation conference, add worksheet, going to click the school and submit. Once you've submitted it, then you can edit it. So I'm going to click on planning up. I'm going to click on planning because that is where well, shucks. Add worksheet. Submit. Okay, this worksheet is going to be for planning and program management. I click. But you would click whatever domain you're focused on in this observation and submit. Once you have completed your worksheet, you're going to add, here we go, thank you. So for planning, here's where I put my evidence from that observation and from the pre-conference, and if I collected any from the post-conference. I'm going to put that evidence here, attach any attachments, and this is where I collect scores. The reason we do the worksheets for special areas is because you're not going to see all of the indicators in one observation. So you build a worksheet. Again, the evaluator is the only one who can see these worksheets. We can't at the state level, the educator can't, no one but the evaluator. So I'm going to complete my evidence here. I'm going to score here, and I'm going to save. If I also witness program management, then I'm going to do the same things for program management. And I'm going to build on this worksheet for the entire observation. And then if I saw anything from direct and indirect services, I can add that as well. And don't forget to save. Most important part, save, save, save. Okay. Score all the domains before signing the worksheet details page. So then I go back to worksheet details. And if I have completed my worksheet, then I add my signature. Now, once I have completed the worksheet and signed it as the evaluator, remember, I'm the only one that's going to sign it because I'm the only one that sees it. Then I go back to the evaluation conference and scroll down. Once you've completed as many observations as are required for that contract level, remember this is an annual one summative, so she had to have 2. So we've got 3 that are completed here. We've already done 2, so we just happen to have 3. Then the preliminary cycle evaluation conference can be held. Now, what I would do is once you click on there, it would say start the conference. So we've already done that. I thought I deleted it. Try and show you what that looks like. Okay. So you see preliminary worksheet, fall semester. If I needed to add another worksheet, I could, but I don't need to. So I go down here to scoring. You'll notice it says a scoring conference is required for the preliminary cycle because I took it back out. I took my signature off of it, so it's not completed now. Normally it would say start the conference. I would click on that. This is where your worksheet will populate the scores. So these scores came from that worksheet that we just completed, and it averaged all of those worksheets together. Or we came to consensus. This is a consensus. Then we add signatures, and you would complete this. You would have it ready and sign it at the preliminary conference. So the educator would sign as well. This is where you would share the scores for the evaluation, for the preliminary cycle. This is also when you would go back and sign your school counselor plan. There's a preliminary conference section in that, and you would go back to that and sign it as well. Thank you so much. The section for signatures is divided and clearly labeled by preliminary, mid-conference, and post final cycle. Okay. So don't forget you would check in with the school counselor plan and the student growth goal at that preliminary cycle conference. And then for final cycle, you go through the same process. Collecting the evidence. The evaluation chair will score the professionalism domain. And it's just as simple as clicking in and signing. So I'm going to add my signature. So that professionalism score will now factor into my overall score. You'll see that the professionalism score is here. This is the results page. This is where you can always check the status of what has been completed and what is missing from the evaluation if you don't just want to trust the bubbles or bars. Of course, we don't have a valid certificate. We're not a real person. But the blue section will always tell you what's missing, what requirements have not been met. And so, of course, we don't have the minimum number of preliminary cycle observations. We don't have the I don't know why it says that. We don't have the number of observers. We needed more observers, since I'm the only one doing it on here for demo purposes. But it will tell you exactly what is missing. I recommend you check this frequently if you are the evaluation chair so that you can make sure that you're on track to get everything completed. But this is where those conference forms will score, those populate into this document at the end. And this is where you will come to do your final recommendations and signatures. Of course, we can't sign it yet because everything hasn't been completed. If you have any attachments that you want to attach that you haven't already put into the places where they go, then those would be here. If you have any kind of letters or anything like that that you wanted to attach, you could put them in this section. One thing I did want to mention is making sure that the settings are accurate before you even start the evaluation. So I actually had a question about this morning. I had a district that called and said, okay, I can't add an evaluator to this person's team. And it took me a lot longer. Like I said, I'm fighting a migraine today, but it took me longer to figure it out. But it was because for evaluation model, they had the educator identified as a school counselor, but they had inadvertently defaulted to expanded adept instead of adept 2020 for special areas. So it wouldn't let them um, add team members because it didn't know who to add or who to pull. So be sure that your contract level and evaluation level are set correctly. Make sure that your evaluation type is correct and make sure that your evaluation model is correct. So especially for school counselors, you're going to want to make sure that says ADEPT 2020, which it also says over here in the tiny print. And you should have all of that information. So you should have the model that's being used, the type of educator you're evaluating, the evaluation level, which this one is summative, and the contract level, which is annual 1. This is where you will also see what school the counselor is assigned to. If for any reason, for instance, if the school counselor were to go out on leave and miss so many days that it knocked them out of that 152 requirement for adept, then you could come here to close the evaluation. If you create an evaluation by mistake and need to remove it, you would click remove and it removes it permanently. Okay. Now I'm going to take you back to the PowerPoint.